the power, the glory, the crown. Since the dawn of time, men have fought and died for them. But what happens when the throne is not conquered by force, but given by the hands of God Himself? What happens when the weight of the crown becomes too heavy for the head that wears it? Today we will travel back in time to an era of prophets, wars, and decisions that changed an entire nation. We will open the sacred pages to uncover the real, intriguing, and profoundly human stories of the first kings of Israel. Stories of glory, betrayal, repentance, and ruin. Prepare yourselves, for these are not just stories of kings. They are mirrors to our own souls. Chapter 1. Saul. The tragedy of the chosen and rejected king. It all began with a request. The people of Israel, seeing the neighboring nations, cried out for a king. And God, through the prophet Samuel, gave them one. His name was Saul. Tall, strong, of noble appearance, the perfect king in human eyes. In the beginning, Saul was victorious, a military leader who united the tribes and defeated enemies. He was the hope of Israel incarnate. But within the king's heart, a seed of insecurity and fear began to sprout. The turning point was an act of disobedience. In a crucial battle against the Amalekites, God gave a clear order through Samuel: destroy everything and everyone. But Saul, yielding to popular pressure and his own arrogance, spared the enemy king and the best of the flock. When Samuel confronted him, Saul's excuse was weak. He blamed the people. At that moment, the prophet uttered the words that sealed his fate. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, He has also rejected you as king. From that day on, Saul's light began to fade. The Spirit of God departed from him, and an evil spirit tormented him. Solomon's reign was the golden age of Israel. His wisdom was legendary, personified in the famous story of the two mothers fighting over a baby. He built the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, an architectural marvel covered in gold, the earthly dwelling of God. Entire nations came to hear his wisdom and see his wealth, but the same prosperity that was his blessing became his trap. To secure political alliances, Solomon married hundreds of foreign women, princesses from Egypt, Moab, and Ammon. God's law was clear: you shall not intermarry with them, for they will surely turn your hearts after their gods. And that is exactly what happened. In his old age, to please his wives, the wisest king in the world began to build altars to pagan gods. The one who built the house for the true God now bowed before idols of stone and wood. God's disappointment was immense. The judgment came. Because of his infidelity, the kingdom would be divided after his death. The great nation that his father David unified with blood and sweat would be torn in two. Solomon's story is the final warning. Neither the greatest wisdom nor the greatest wealth can protect a heart that turns away from God. Prosperity without spiritual vigilance is a path to idolatry and ruin. Saul, David, Solomon. 3 kings, 3 journeys, 3 eternal warnings. Their stories show us that power reveals character, that sin has consequences, and that obedience to God is more valuable than any crown. They were not fairy tale characters, but men of flesh and blood, whose choices echo to this day. If stories like these touch your heart and make you reflect, I ask you to help us continue this work. Leave your like on this video, as it helps us reach more people. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next journeys through the profound truths of the Bible. We want to know your opinion. Which of these kings has the most impactful story for you? Or what other biblical character would you like to see in our next video? Leave your comment below. Thank you very much for your attention, and may peace be with you. In the grand tapestry of history, some names are woven in threads of pure gold. They speak of wisdom, of glory, of a kingdom at its zenith. One such name is Solomon, the son of David, a king whose legacy was not forged in the fires of war, but in the quiet chambers of a heart devoted to divine understanding. His story begins not with a demand for power, but with a humble plea in a dream. When God offered the young king anything he desired, Solomon did not ask for riches, long life, or the defeat of his enemies. He asked for a single, precious gift: a wise and discerning heart to govern his people justly. This selfless request pleased God so profoundly that he granted Solomon not only wisdom unparalleled in all of history, but also the riches and honor he had not asked for. The world would soon witness the fruits of this divine endowment. His wisdom was not a mere abstract knowledge. It was a living, breathing force. It famously resolved the impossible dispute between two mothers claiming the same child. A display of insight so brilliant, it solidified his authority and inspired awe throughout the land. Under his rule, Israel entered its golden age, a kingdom draped in gold and shimmering with peace. Trade routes flourished, alliances were secured through diplomacy, and the nation's borders were safe. But Solomon's crowning achievement, the fulfillment of his father David's most cherished dream, was the construction of a house for God himself. For 7 years, the finest materials and the most skilled craftsmen worked to build the magnificent temple in Jerusalem. It was a masterpiece of devotion, a symbol of a nation's covenant, and the place where the very presence of God would dwell among his people. In this, Solomon's virtue shone brightest. He was the great builder, the wise judge, the shepherd of a peaceful and prosperous flock. Yet, the brightest lights can cast the longest shadows. The very prosperity that was Solomon's blessing slowly became a snare. To maintain his kingdom's security and influence, he entered into hundreds of political marriages with foreign princesses. This was a direct violation of God's command. He writes of his pursuit of wealth, projects, and earthly knowledge. He had it all: gardens and palaces, silver and gold, power and prestige. Yet, he gives his own verdict on these worldly achievements. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. It is the cry of a man who chased every horizon under the sun and found only a hollow echo of emptiness. This was not the cynicism of a bitter man, but the enlightened conclusion of the wisest man, who learned the hard way that a life without God at its center, no matter how glorious, is ultimately meaningless. Through the pages of Ecclesiastes, we witness Solomon's return journey. He peels back every layer of human endeavor and finds that true, lasting joy cannot be found in things, but only in the Creator of those things. His journey had come full circle. From the young king who asked only for wisdom, to the powerful monarch who strayed, and finally, to the old sage who rediscovered the ultimate truth. And what was his final conclusion? the sum of all his wisdom. After a lifetime of triumphs and failures, he gives it to us with perfect clarity. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. In the end, Long's greatest legacy was not his gold or his temple, but this final, hard-won piece of wisdom. A timeless truth that his life so powerfully illustrates, that the ultimate purpose, the only path to a life of meaning, begins and ends with returning to the ways of the Lord.